Why, hello there. You just tuned in to another exciting episode of Unboxing Special Collections. We're streaming to you live from North Carolina State University Libraries in Raleigh, North Carolina. If this is your first time joining us on this program today, welcome. And if you're one of our regulars, welcome back. My name is Victor Betts. I am the Student Success Librarian for Special Collections at North Carolina State University Libraries. Today's special episode of Unboxing Special Collections is Asian and Asian American Lives in the Archives, where we take a deep dive into the archives and take a look at some historical records that highlight the invisible history of Asian and Asian Americans through NC State University history, as well as their many accomplishments and contributions. Today's streaming is part of the campus-wide celebration of APISA Heritage Month, or Asian Pacific Islander South Asian American Heritage Month. Now, some of our viewers at home may have heard of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, which is federally celebrated in the month of May. At NC State, however, APISA Heritage Month is celebrated between March 15th and April 15th to accommodate graduation and commencement season during the month of May. So for more information on APISA Heritage Month, visit the Multicultural Student Affairs website link, which your chat monitors will enter in there shortly, or already done so. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce an extra special guest who will be joining us in the conversation today. Please welcome Dr. Kyung Hee Ha, Assistant Professor in the Department of Foreign Languages and Literatures.
Thank you, Victor, for your introduction, and please call me Kyung Hee. Hello, the viewers. My name is Kyung Hee Ha. I'm an assistant professor of Japanese language and culture in the newly named Department of World Languages and Cultures. And I'm very excited to unbox the special collections with Victor today and share what we find about Asian and Asian American lives on our campus with all of you.
Yes.
All right. But before we dive into the collections, Victor, could you tell us about how this project started?
Yeah, that's a really good question. When I first started working here in 2019, one of my first tasks working in special collections was to find images. I'm going to grab a picture really quickly to show you all. Okay. Can we? All right. Thank you very much for your patience while we took care of technical difficulties. Hopefully, our sound is now back for our streaming. Let us know if the audience members or viewers at home, if you could hear us and give us a thumbs up and kind of let us know that you are indeed hearing us at home with the audio. If so, we'll go ahead and troubleshoot and move forward, or we'll have to figure out what to do next. All right, I think we're good. All right, I think we're good. So where did we leave off last time? Yes, Justina Williams, first African-American academic staff member hired at NC State, who worked in the lab of Dr. Kenichi Kojima, who is a Japanese faculty member in the genetics department. And you can see here in both of their images that they are working with fruit fly gene mutations, or we're experimenting with that. And there was a specialty. So although I was not able to find any additional traces of images of Justina Williams, what I did stumble across were lots and lots of materials pertaining to Asian and Asian American faculty members and researchers, right, while I was sifting and digging through the genetics department collection. And I sort of noticed that, okay, there's a lot of materials pertaining to Asian faculty members and research. However, when we look at the institutional level, right, at collections or archives, there really isn't any visible representation. So I wanted to sort of address sort of that disconnect and that gap in how we are showcasing the lives and experiences of our Asian and Asian American populations, right, as well as to really highlighting and showcasing all their accomplishments and contributions to NC State history, but also locally here in the Triangle as well too, and the impact they had for us even today too, and also getting their voices more part of the greater conversations when we talk and think about the more dominant narratives of university history. So that's their connection, and I like to think that Justina Williams really was a catalyst for me to start and embark on this archival research into this invisible history of Asian and Asian Americans here on campus. So that's a picture of that. And all these images that we will be looking at are all available through our special collections. Yes, thank you very much. And also accessible online as well too. And so, so go back to your question, Kyung Hee. I think that was the story as to kind of launch me into what, kind of looking into this and kind of making this piece of information accessible to many, many people across campus.
Yeah, I love to hear these kind of unexpected coincidence.
Yes.
That is like a journey of archive research.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and just a quick research for myself also, I found that Dr. Kojima advised Dr. Tomoko Ota, who later became the first Japanese woman to graduate with doctorate from NC State in 1967. So this is the beauty of archival research.
Yes.
Yeah.
And all this information, by the way, too, is highlighted in the historical state timeline that I developed after a year-long research into this history. And our monitors will drop the link to our Asian and Asian American historical state timeline, which viewers can click on and kind of get a quick glance. It's a really great place just to start and kind of nice introduction into Asian and Asian American history at NC State. Also, we just launched our exhibit yesterday in our visualization studio called the Immersive Asian and Asian American Historical State Timeline exhibit, which is located in the DHO Library's visualization studio, which for those of you who do not know, it's 360 degrees high-tech space with high definition projectors, sound. So you get to interact with the timeline in a very dynamic and really unique and fun way, along with your chance to look at some short-form oral histories through our Wolf Tales project that we collected on Asian and Asian American students and student leaders. What else is there? There's that. Yeah, a bunch of fun stuff. So check that out. More information will be available in the chat again for the exhibit. It will be open on Mondays and Thursdays from 12 to 5, all the way to April 13th, if I believe. Yes. So please check that out. It's free and open to the public, so you do not have to be affiliated with the campus. Please tell your friends, families, neighbors to come check it out. All right.
Right.
So that was that.
And I'm assuming that in your research, you found many firsts.
Oh, yes.
And speaking of the first student from Asia, can you tell us what you found?
Yes. So when do you think the first Asian student graduated from NC State?
I cheated. I did a research.
That's right. Kyung Hee already knows already.
Yeah.
And this is, not most people know about this. I think a lot of our international students probably know this information now because it's part of like their orientation, I think, to campus too. And my colleague Virginia Ferris and I work a lot with international students here on campus. And when we ask this question, they already know because they just recently learned about it. So it's good that it's sort of becoming part of the regular narrative and regular history that's being sort of told and retold and shared with our international students as well too, so they can make that connection and that sense of belonging here at NC State and be part of the Wolf Pack as well too. Yeah.
Honestly, that really surprised me how early.
Yes.
Yeah. It was so 1898
is when Teisaku Sugishita of Japan graduated from NC State, and we're actually going to take a look at a photograph of the class of 1998 right now, with this close-up camera here. And before I show you the picture, just a quick warning, a little heads up, content warning for offensive language, and we'll kind of talk about this as well too. And this is also one of the beauties of actually getting to look at the physical material rather than the scanned or digitized version. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well too. So let's take a look, shall we? Whoops. Okay, there we go, the glare there. So first, I want you all to sort of focus on the image itself, right? So you have this graduating class of 1998, and I understand my hand's in the way, and we'll get to that in a moment. And then on the far top left is Teisaku Sugishita right there, the lone Asian student in the lineup here. Along with, can any of our campus folks know this man sitting in the center of the page? Do you know who that is, Kyung Hee?
Is he one of the statues on campus?
Yeah, I'm surprised. This is Holiday Hall is the name after President Hall, right? So he's the first president right there. So he's sitting right there with a nice little hat in his lap. And Teisaku Sugishita right there from Japan. So pretty cool picture. Some of you probably may have seen this picture. It's definitely in our timeline. It's the first entry in our timeline, right? As the first international student, first Asian student to graduate from NC State in 1899. So, and I'll probably lift it up a little bit so you can probably get it closer. There we go. So you can see, sorry for the shaking hands. But so there's a closer look. And I'm going to sit it down again really quickly and kind of take a look at the marginalia or the notes of the images. So the scan copy obviously does not showcase all this text or this handwritten notes here. So the previous owner, right, who donated this material are the ones who most likely made this personal notes. And basically they've sort of identified each person, and you can see how they identified Alexander Hall right here, and all the other students. But you can see here very problematic terminology, Kyung Hee right here.
Yeah.
The word
JAP.
JAP, which is a racial epithet towards Japanese people during the time period. So you can kind of see that in this terminology is probably most like predates, World War II in Japan, and wasn't a war and conflict. Right. But this is an example of a harmful and problematic term that staff here at Special Collections are constantly thinking about and figuring out ways of how to remediate and how to rectify and contextualize harmful terms, especially terms that are inaccurate and based on stereotypes and racist attitudes, particularly around describing people from historically marginalized communities, right, and underrepresented, especially in the archives, right? And so what we'll do in this instance is that we know that it exists, right? So we will not, we're not interested in erasing it, right? Or changing it or censoring it, because this itself is a historical record of itself. It's a documentation of the ownership of the material. We call this provenance as well, to kind of see the ownership of the materials, right? But it also gives us a historical marker as to the attitude towards Japanese people during this time period as well too. So in this type of instance, we do something called reparative archival descriptions, which is a new initiative that we've taken on during the pandemic, and we've actually created a website, and we're actually implementing these workflows into our work here in special collections, where we would either update terminologies or description that was created by a library employee, or we would contextualize the problematic or harmful terms in order to preserve the historical record itself too, right? So we will acknowledge so that this is a racist term to describe Japanese people during the time period and currently as well too, and how we are sort of providing more information, and how when we go to further describe this material in our collections, that we will not reuse or utilize this problematic or harmful term as well too.
Right.
So,
and if you look at this photo very closely, you can see that quotation mark
yes.
on a JP word, and it's probably done by somebody later on the years because the colors are different.
Right. And that's a great point. But our viewers at home probably can't really see it because we can't get a good close-up. But the ink quality in the word versus the quotation marks are a different color ink. So you can tell that perhaps at a later period of time, for whatever reasons, that somebody else probably put that word in quotes, maybe to save face, probably for the original owner or something like that. But who knows? There's probably a number of reasons that could happen. So that is an example of some of the reparative archival descriptions work that we have taken on in our department, and how we were addressing that. And thank you. And if our viewers take a look at our historical timelines, they will see a content awareness note. It's called, and you'll see there on the very top, it says, please note that some historical materials may contain harmful content and/or descriptions, and learn how we're addressing it. So we want to make sure that we're not providing just simple lip service or just a DEI check mark. We really want to back up what we say, and we really want to mean it. So we want to, be accountable and be transparent to the public, and showcase the accomplishments that we've done so far, and our goals moving forward, and how to repair, remediate, and to rectify these terms that exist in archives, right?
Right. And then when you do it, you kind of have to go through each archival material and do it manually.
Right. So, every archives, if they do take on this work, has their own different processes and different workflows and how they want to handle it. Initially, we kind of handle it out of a case-by-case situation, because we really wanted to give the care and attention to every term that we come across, and also making sure that we're getting it right. And then so we are now in the process of possibly automating that process and kind of see what happens if a particular term is used numerous times in the collection, right? And so do we address it at a collection level? Do we address it at a folder level or the item level? So for now, I think we've done a really good job of really tackling it by case, and making sure they give it as much attention as possible as we go through it. So it's been great so far.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing that.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking.
So let's take a look at other first.
Yeah.
So now we took a look at Taesak Sugishita, who was the first Asian student to graduate from NC State, and he happened to be from Japan.
Right.
But there were other students, coming from Asia region at the time.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to my laptop so the viewers at home can see. Here we go. And let me make the screen bigger. So this is our Asian and Asian American historical state timeline that I mentioned earlier today. And the first entry is Taesak Sugishita that we mentioned earlier. And when we get into the 20th century, the 1920s, we see here our first Chinese students who graduated. There's actually a total of 4 Chinese students who graduated from NC State in 1922. This sort of practice was very common during this time period, where bright young men from developing, quote unquote, developing or industrializing countries would send their smartest and best students to the United States or Europe to get educated, learn, particularly at NC State for agriculture and engineering, learn skills and knowledge and expertise, go back to their home countries and help industrialize their country. And it was a common practice, definitely for the 4 Chinese students you see here. And for viewers at home, is really, please go ahead and click on the images and kind of look more in detail about each of these students and then kind of hear their stories. Not their own stories, because their profiles are told from the perspectives of the AgriMech editors, right? So it's not first person, but at least it gives you somewhat of an idea of what their lives may have been like as well, too. And you can see here the first Hong Kongese student who graduated in 1924, the first East Indian student who graduated in 1925. There's a total of 2 during this time period, for example, and there's more and more firsts in this timeline as well, too.
It's really fascinating to see these first, students coming from India, China, and Hong Kong. Around the time, immigration was actually working against, people coming from Asia. So 2 years after the 4 Chinese students graduated was 1924 Johnson-Reed Act, which assigned the quota based on the 1890 national census.
Yes.
So basically barred immigration from Asia region. But despite all these, the students still came and then learned and then brought back all the knowledge and experience and the wisdom that they gained here to develop, their motherland.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And just to imagine, what it would have been like to be the only Asian student during that time period. You don't have H Mart. There's no H Mart. There's no Grand Asian Market.
There's no boba place.
No Patel Brothers. No nothing. Right. So it's like what do you do for like food and like signs of like home and comfort right during that time period. So I can only imagine how it would have been like for the earlier students who came. And this type of story is really important for our current students, right? Both our Asian American students and our international students here. Because oftentimes, and when I work with international students, it can be quite an isolating experience to come to a new country and experience that culture shock, but to be able to hear sort of similar stories and resonate with students who came much, much earlier than they have, it kind of creates a connection or a bond, and it kind of makes them feel like they belong to a deeper history, and that they're part of this legacy of deeper history of Asian students and international students here at campus too. So I really love to see the students sort of feel empowered with that.
And it definitely applies to international faculty members too,
Absolutely.
such as myself.
Right.
So I just came from Japan, from Tokyo in August, and this is my first year. And then as soon as I got here, Victor introduced me to this rich history of Asian and Asian, not just students, but faculty members and staff on our campus. And to learn that 1898, there was somebody from Japan to study here, I was like, wow, I do belong here, So thank you for making it visible. It was always there, but without, your work, we wouldn't have known.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to do that. And I want to get the word out there more and more for sure. So. All right, so let's see, what's next on our agenda?
So we've so far looked at the students from Japan, China, and Hong Kong mostly, but what about, other Asians, or how about the diversity within Asian category?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. One of the first things that I wanted to make certain that I did when I was kind of diving into this research into Asian and Asian American history is that I knew that stories and experiences of Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Indian tend to sort of dominate the narratives around the Asian American experience. So I wanted to put a lot of concerted effort and to try to look for stories of Southeast Asians, right? Of Asian women, Asian refugees, indigenous folks in Asia, right, such as the Hmong community. And fun fact that I learned that North Carolina, I believe, last time I checked, was the fourth largest Hmong population in the United States as well too. So that's something that's very interesting. So there is a history, right, there. Also around like, and also queer folks and gender and all this. So I wanted to make sure that I was inclusive as much as possible because as you can see in the timeline, it is very much male dominated, but that also speaks to the historical time placement, right? Universities and colleges were only allowed for men during this time period, and then women weren't really allowed to pursue higher education during this time period. So then we started slowly see sort of the historical progression of women joining the field and pursuing education and trying to find other marginalized voices within the category of Asian and Asian American, because I think people, especially in the American South, are not really exposed to the diversity and richness of Asian and Asian American culture, right? If we unpack the categories of Asian, right, it has tons of countries, languages, cultures, and then when you consider issues around like caste or class, war and conflict, colonialism, right? This adds this layer of complexity and complicated trajectories around like migration as well too. So I also wanted, that was on my forefront as I was doing my research and making sure that that effort was sort of also showcased and shared with people who might be interacting with the archive. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So the fun,
Yeah.
I think we're going to move on to our next
Yes.
fun showcase. So we're going to actually go here, you can see in my screen, really, really prominent and super important faculty member, Asian American faculty member by the name of George Matsumoto, who joined NC State in 1948 as part of the College of Design. He is a well-renowned architect, and I'm going to let Kyung Hee talk a little bit about Professor Matsumoto as well.
Yeah, so I didn't know that actually there was the state's most prominent architectural award named after him, right? Matsumoto Award. And I was interested in about Matsumoto, so I did a quick research. And he was born in San Francisco and in 1922, and he grew up in Japantown. And then he enrolled at UC Berkeley, and he majored in architecture. But what happened was the war broke out between Japan and the United States at the time. And as a result of executive order by Roosevelt, Matsumoto and his family were sent to one of the internment camps. And so he and his family were sent to Poston, Arizona. And luckily, he was able to leave that camp and he was able to continue his study, but not many universities actually accepted Japanese Americans at the time because, America was against the war, in the war against Japan. So the university that accepted him was University of Washington, St. Louis, Missouri. And then he finished his degree in Michigan. And then in 1948, he landed a job at NC State. And that is merely 3 years after the war had ended. And up until then, the Japanese Americans and Japanese, 120,000 of them were interned as enemy aliens in this country.
Right, yeah, and that history of Japanese American incarceration is something that we also highlight and talk about and don't shy away from in the biographical note of George Matsumoto's papers that you can see here on the screen. And so please take your time and look more into that part of the history and how it really shaped his life and his work moving forward since then. And then now I want to really quickly show a model home that George Matsumoto created. And quick shout out to my colleagues in my department, Phil and Taylor, I believe, helped me locate and take pictures of these. But this is an example of a model home that we have in special collections at another offsite location for us. But this is this beautiful sort of like, this is an actual home that George Matsumoto built and designed. It's actually here in Raleigh. I would say maybe like what, maybe 10 minutes away perhaps, maybe Virginia, you think it's like 10 minutes away. My colleague Phil knows a lot about this topic because he's done so many great programs and and history on this as well too. So shout out to Phil, and Phil, feel free to drop any links or any pertinent information on George Matsumoto as you see fit as well too.
And did he lead this architecture tour as well in 2020?
Phil, my colleague,
Yeah.
did it. Yes, he did. Yeah, and he created a virtual reality space where viewers can actually interact with a lot of the materials from the George Matsumoto collection in a really cool way. So you can kind of take a look at blueprints and drawings and notes and all kinds of fun stuff that you really don't get made accessible, unless you actually request it. So I'm just flipping through some of the awesome pictures that were shared with me, and this is something that that we have preserved, and it's really cool to actually see the actual house that's still standing today in really great condition too. But there is a fun note that I can get out on my screen really quickly. Maybe we can just do a wide shot on us. So that home you just saw, the fun fact about that is that in 1958, the model house was selected for a display at the Brussels World Fair in Belgium. And the plexiglass architectural model in the series was designed by Robert Jogen, I believe is, and sent to Brussels in a custom shipping box for the display. And the model was returned to Raleigh after the Brussels World's Fair and remained in the Matsumoto house for decades before it came. So that's a little fun tidbit that he shared with us there. Yeah.
And these designs are timeless.
Yes,
So
yeah.
beautiful.
I mean, they're going to be well preserved for sure for future research.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I see some influences of a Japanese garden,
Yes.
Japanese houses. Beautiful, beautiful.
So you definitely can see sort of the Japanese modernism and design sort of influencing his work, obviously his life, pulling from his personal and cultural life as well too.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So that's just a quick intro to George Matsumoto. Again, there's a lot more you can learn about George Matsumoto. So please, if you're interested, find out more about that. And next, we're actually going to go into another faculty member, scientist. So bear with us for a moment. This is a big photo album. All right. Okay. All right. All right. Make sure it's centered properly. Okay. And so this photo album is the Dr. Nishina photo album. And Kyung Hee and I are going to talk a little bit about.
So Dr. Nishina is known as the father of nuclear physics in Japan. So he's a scholar from Japan.
And the reason why do you want to talk about the reason why we have
Why is his album here in NC?
Yeah. So the reason why we have the photos here is because it's part of Dr. Kelly's collection, who was a scientist and faculty member here, and who also worked on nuclear research during the wartime too. So I'm going to pause really quickly on Dr. Kelly and talk a little bit about the album, and then we'll chronologically talk about that. So Dr. Nishina, this is his personal family album that was donated to Dr. Kelly. And let me pull up his information here too, so they can help us. So people can have a reference to it as well. Here it is, the Harry Charles Kelly papers. Here we are. Yes. Okay, cool. So Harry Charles Kelly, and this is MC00072. And Dr. Nishina is also a physicist and quantum he studied physics and quantum mechanics, as you mentioned earlier. He was born in Okayama, Japan. And this is his personal family album with these notes and pictures and stuff. So this This picture is from, I would say, what time period? This is when he's a child, so
1910?
1910s, I
Yeah.
believe, yes. And you can see this person.
Actually, 1890.
1890, that's right. That's when he was born. 1890
yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's
1890 was when he was born.
Right.
And then these are his family pictures, and you can probably see there's a little glare there, but you can see a picture, this picture of him and his brothers. And you know, we're familiar with Japanese culture and you know, across time and things like that, but you can just tell by the type of clothing that they're wearing. They're a well-to-do Japanese family, and to be able to wear this type of clothing as well as to organize a family portrait of this sort of magnitude is sort of reflective of their class status.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And we kind of start going into Dr. Nishina's research days, right, at Tokyo University. You can see here a picture of him in 1925. We're jumping into Copenhagen. And you might be wondering, like, okay, what's the big deal for those who might not be familiar with Dr. Nishina, right? You can see if you can see here really quickly the note here in the margins with Dr. and Mrs. Bohr in front of Kamakura Daibutsu in 1935. Another note here, right here, with Dr. Bohr in Tokyo, 1937. So are you familiar with the name Bohr, Niels Bohr? Okay, so Niels Bohr is a Danish physicist as well too. So he's one of the leading scientists of his time period, and these are more pictures of Dr. Nishina and Dr. Bohr working together on a blackboard and doing some. I am not a physicist. I am not a nuclear physicist, so I can't speak to what they're doing or the formula on the board. But you know, Dr. Bohr is a big deal, and they were really great friends as well too. Hence, they were also traveling together in Europe. You can see here in this photo, the note says under construction of Nishina 210-town cyclotron in 1938. So we are slowly getting, you know, this is a period, as Kyung Hee mentioned before, of the atomic bomb, and sort of the race to create the atomic bombing, leading up to the disastrous atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, right? And here's some pictures again of Dr. Nishina with the 210-ton cyclotron. And I'm going to flip through really quickly, but there are many other prominent scientists in the field. So not only was he friends with Niels Bohr, but he was also friends with Oscar Klein, and both Oscar Klein and Dr. Nishina came up with the Klein-Nishina formula. If that means something to you, all you all you physicists out there or quantum mechanics students, you probably are familiar with that. He was also great friends with Werner Heisenberg, and of course, Dr. Harry Kelly, Llewellyn Thomas, and Frederick Hund, I believe is the name. So I'm just going to show you really quickly some more photographs. Do you want to talk about this picture right here with Nishina and Prince Chichibu?
Yeah, so Prince Chichibu is a prince from the imperial family who was the only sovereign before the end of the World War II, before Japan democratized. So you can see here that his research was an investment of the nation to really show the world that Japan is an advanced country, and especially when Japan went into the war against China in 1937 and then also 1941 against the US. I think it was very critical for the nation to develop the military weapons. And so I can tell it's a big deal that the imperial family visits the lab. And yeah, wow, this is very significant.
Yes. And then we're just going to fast. This is more personal moments, you know, traveling through Japan and Europe. And I wanted to find another moment. Maybe there's also Dr. Yukawa.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to say something a little bit about Dr. Yukawa, cultural medal?
Yeah, I think he's the first recipient of Nobel Prize from Japan. He's from Kyoto University, and I believe he got his prize in physics.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first Nobel Prize winner from Japan in physics.
And they were, I guess, colleagues, co-researchers.
Yes,
Yeah.
co-researchers. Yes. So a picture of that. And for those of you who might be thinking, yes, I have bare hands. I'm just handling the paper thing, and I know it's a preconceived notion that we might think that we have to. People in special collections or archivists have to always wear gloves, but it's just the answer. It depends. If you have clean, dry hands, you're able to handle the paper much better because of the physicality of your fingers, and then it has better dexterity with the paper. And actually, it helps preserve the paper even and make sure there's no tears and stuff happening. So this is a critical moment in the life of Japan-U.S. war relations as well as scientific research, right? This picture you can see here in the caption here at the destruction of Nishijima cyclotron in November 1945. So this is post-atomic bomb dropping. This is after Japan has seceded to the war, and so now they're under U.S. occupation. And what was happening during this time period is that the U.S. government was going into Japan and indiscriminately just destroying all things that they deemed weapons of destruction, right? However, this created a huge uproar in the scientific community, the global, international scientific community, because they were recklessly and indiscriminately destroying really, really important and critical research that was not used for weapons of destruction, I believe, at the time. And hence, that's the reason why the U.S. government hired Harry Charles Kelly to kind of be the liaison, so to speak, right, to help the U.S. military differentiate between weapons of destruction and pure scientific progress or research. And you can see this image right here on the bottom, on my bottom right, where they're like dumping things into the ocean as well too, and through this sort of relationship with Dr. Nishina and Harry Kelly, that's how they became really strong friends. So much so that his family donated this personal album to Harry Kelly, and at the the death of Dr. Nishina, they requested Harry Kelly to be there, but also to have a piece. When Harry Kelly passed away, the family requested to receive a portion of Harry Kelly's ashes to be buried along with Dr. Nishina's grave. In Japan, I believe is what I've seen, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So there is a lot of, just in this album alone, there's just lots of valuable scientific history that's displayed here. History around war, right? International war, World War, scientific advancement, and sort of U.S.-Japan relations, and also in Europe at the time too, because they were very much, close knit together in the scientific community during this time period. So, was there any other pictures that you wanted to take a look at, or notes probably here, Kyung Hee?
Yeah.
I'm trying to find any other.
I think.
More Copenhagen conferences, scientific conferences.
I think for me, this one, yes. Yeah.
This is a 1950 radio isotope, and we don't know obviously we don't have any more additional information about this. There we go. Sorry about the glare.
And the caption says, on the arrival of radio isotope in April 1950. But from these pictures, we can't tell if it was arrival in Japan or arrival in the U.S.
Right. So we never know. One of those mysteries that we would have to do further research to find that out too. And here's a picture of, this is with Merrick representative at Institute, and I believe, who is Merrick? I think I saw someone somewhere before, but maybe I didn't. Yeah. Is there a picture, note about Merrick? Probably not, maybe it is. Yeah, okay. And then, not Merrick, Lauritsen, that's who I was thinking about. Lauritsen. Dr. Lauritsen is a Danish U.S. scientist, Charles Lauritsen. I believe he's a weapons creator, I can't remember weapons, I don't know, but don't quote me on that, but. for any of those science histories out there. Yes.
Yeah.
You want to talk? Do you want to mention?
Yeah.
something about
So the picture says Nagasaki in October 1950. So 5 years after the dropping of the A bomb in Nagasaki, I think Dr. Nishina was doing a research on the soil maybe, and then what the effect
Right.
was. Because this was the first time and the only time the atomic weapons was used against the people. So I think a lot
civilians,
of civilians, yes. And so I think a lot of researchers were very interested in the effects, aftermath. Yeah.
Right, and we should say that Dr. Nishina was one of the leading scientists who was sent by the Japanese government to go to Nagasaki and Hiroshima to confirm that indeed the atomic bomb was dropped, and the aftermath was indeed an effects of atomic bombing as well too. So
And that was immediately after.
Yes.
So he went back
he went
multiple
back,
times to verify.
To verify and to confirm that it was. And these are pictures of his funeral. And I think there's one significant point about his funeral, and Kyung Hee could probably talk a little bit more about it, but it's the writing, I believe, right? Here it is, yes. And let me so make sure we get this properly. Yes.
Wow.
So this caption, and it's probably small for viewers, but
yeah, it says Dr. Nishina's grave, and parentheses, the letters on the tombstone were written by Prime Minister Yoshida. So Yoshida Shigeru were the leader during the wartime, and he was a general. And this really shows that the Professor Nishida was really working for the Imperial Army for his nation at the time, because Japan was fighting the war against the United States, and of course they needed to win. And even after Japan surrendered, I think these kind of activities were not completely persecuted, I guess. And this is how the Prime Minister Yoshida was able to still publicly show his respect and relationship with Dr. Nishina. So that's really interesting. Yeah.
Okay. So we got into history a lot about Asian and Asian folks, and to say maybe we can, with the 10 minutes we have left, maybe we can jump into Asian American history a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and jump on our timeline.
Yes.
And I'll share that with my screen really quickly. And then Kyung Hee could probably share a little bit more too. Okay, so I'm gonna go down to, in this Professor Zia, to maybe our first Asian American student body president. Yeah.
So it wasn't until 1982 when we had the first Asian American student body president, and his name was Jim Yo-Kam. And this is interesting because right before he became the president, a few months before that, in June 1982, we had the murder of Vincent Chin.
Yes.
Yeah, in Detroit. Yeah, and then that really incited the Pan-Asian student activism.
Right.
And I was just curious, kind of imagining how that also led the rise of the first, Asian American student body president on our campus too. So, I want to actually learn more about the background of how he was chosen.
Right. Yeah. And for those of you who are at home watching, and if you're not familiar with the name Vincent Chin, please Google that, look that up. It's a really great documentary film called "Who Killed Vincent Chin," and it follows the murder case of Vincent Chin and sort of the automobile industry in Detroit at the time, and it's caused a media storm a bit, and it's really, really important piece of Asian American history that we should definitely learn more about. And I actually I was in communication with Jim Yo-Kam when I was first doing my research into archival research, and we also had a sort of a conversation of what it meant to be Asian American, right? Because he, like myself, is of mixed Asian background, so it was a really fun, interesting conversation about that, and I was kind of sharing with him the fact that we are really broadening our ideas about what the category of Asian and Asian American is. So very much part. I'd liked him to be very much part of that history as well too. So it's a really great conversation to have with him. Yeah. And you can see next off topic a little bit, but the North Carolina Japan Center also
Oh, yeah,
established
that's right.
just a few years prior to the first Asian American student body president as well too.
And the previous decade, I think, saw the rise of Asian student enrollment on our campus, right?
Yeah.
So in 1976, how many students did we have?
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
yeah.
Yeah. If we want to switch to the screen share of our timeline really quickly, we can kind of show you. So that's a picture of Jim Yoakum, the first Asian American student body president that Kyung Hee talked about. And then we went on to look at the enrollment numbers in 1976.
Yes.
So here they are. Yeah. So the Asian student enrollment number in 1976 was actually 54 out of 16,903 students. So the total student body at this time was 16,000, almost 17,000 students. And out of that 17,000, just 54 were students. Now, something I wanted to keep in mind about this data, right, is to make sure that and anybody who sees that data knows that that information is not disaggregated, right? So it doesn't really distinguish between ethnicity, or also doesn't distinguish between citizenship. So we don't know if that number is captured both international students or Asian American students, right? So this is part of the reason why I wanted to make sure to distinguish between Asian and Asian American, because for many reasons, right? Often Asians, even to this day, are seen as professional foreigners. There's all the stereotypes, but we also wanted to understand the moments in history of unity, as well as also differentiating the differences in, for example, like migration and history, as we mentioned earlier before too. So those are really important. And if we look at the enrollment numbers, if we jump to
2018.
In 2018, the numbers jumped to 2,282 students who enrolled out of 35,000. So still, percentage-wise, smaller, but however, it's growing, right? And
Yes.
And this, of course, is on trend that not only are the student number or the numbers for student enrollment of Asian Americans are growing, but the triangle itself, the Asian population, and the triangle has just been significantly booming for a variety of factors, right? So like the industry, technology, business, et cetera, too. So
Right. So where I live in Mooresville, I saw the data from actually 2010, and more than 25% of the residents in Mooresville were identified as Asians.
Right.
So we can see that trend, and then that data was from 2010. So we can see that it's probably a lot higher now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think where we want to last end up or wrap up our conversation is that, Kyung Hee and I know the importance of really documenting, preserving the voices and experience of Asian Americans here at NC State. And definitely there is a need for it, right, clearly, because this sort of information wasn't available at the wider institutional level since I started in 2019 and made public 2020, 2021, right? And as you see here in the timeline, more information started to taper off. And that's why Kyung Hee and I have started or are initiating a project to actually curate and collect voices of Asian and Asian Americans, particularly at NC State, because we want to expand that collection, right? So if our viewers out there or people you know who identify as Asian or Asian American or have materials that pertains to Asian and Asian American history at NC State, please reach out to us. I mean, we're really interested in hearing from you. And there's a variety of ways that you can contribute, right? You can either donate materials, and we're really broad into what types of materials we're doing, and we're still working out the kinks and actually the official word, and we'll get all that up there. But also creating opportunities for people to actually create things to donate, so like zines, artwork, any type of materials, right? And also, we have this wonderful project called the Wolf Tales Project, which was initiated by my colleague Virginia Ferris, which is a short form oral history. During the pandemic, we sort of pivoted and created a virtual Wolf Tales, and we created a special a piece of Heritage Month virtual Wolf Tales link that will be dropped or has probably already dropped in the chat right now. So, if you're a little bit hesitant to either donate materials because you want to hold on to them a little bit more, and that's totally okay. or if you're not really creative, or you're not, don't want to create something, but you do want to share your stories from your voice, you can go ahead and just record yourself telling the story, and you can follow the question prompts that we provided for you at the comfort of your home and your own spaces, and submit that video to us, and we'll consider preserving that as part of our Wolf Tales collection as well too. Yeah.
And this is a wonderful project,
Yes.
and we're collecting all kinds of stories and materials and about student organization, individual students, and faculty members, and also staff and family of NC State.
Yes.
So if you know anybody, if you have something, reach out to us, and we can work together and create this timeline collectively.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode of Unboxing Special Collections, Asian and Asian American Lives in the Archives. Thank you very much to our viewers for joining in, and we hope that you learned a little bit about Asian and Asian American history that's really invisible or really unknown of, right, at the wider history. And we hope that, if anything, this will kind of provide the catalyst or motivation for you to dig deep or dive deeper into all of our materials and resources that are available through special collections here at NC State University Libraries. And please reach out to us if you have any questions about archival research or how to access these materials in the future.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Thanks for tuning in, and looking forward to working with all of you.
Yes.
Yep.